Waiting for validation. Why are you waiting for anybody to validate you? The opinion that matters the most in your life is the opinion of God concerning you. It doesn't matter what any other person thinks. Let me tell you something. When you start at a particular thing, when you start with what God has asked you to do, initially the response you will get is that it is not possible. When you begin to keep pushing on what and doing what God has asked you to do, as you keep pushing on it, as you keep doing it, eventually they will tell you it is difficult. But if you refuse to give up and you keep doing what God has asked you to do, eventually they will begin to rally around you and celebrate you for achieving it. Never forget that people will eventually readjust to accept you. It doesn't matter how they started at the beginning. When you start, they will tell you, nobody has done this before. Did they not tell Zechariah? Nobody has answered the name John in our lineage before. So why do you want to name your child John? But eventually they got used to it. Let me tell you, don't be afraid to do what God has put in your heart next year. People will eventually adjust. They will eventually understand. Let me tell you, relying on external validation so that people will understand you, so that you can understand your worth, is not sustainable at all. Relying on what people will say about you, how they will approve of you before you do what God has asked you to do, before you even know how much you are worth, is not sustainable. It will fade away. Let me tell you, if you give people the power to use their words to build you up, you have also given them the power to use their words to break you down. Because if their mouths lifted you, their mouths will bring you down. Have confidence in what God has asked you to do. Don't depend on people to build you up. Don't depend on people to tell you you are good enough. Don't depend on people to tell you that God is with you. Don't depend on people to tell you that what God has asked you to do, that thing is truly from God. Don't depend on them. Don't depend on them. You are wonderful regardless of people's opinion. You are powerful regardless of people's opinion. You are wonderful regardless of what they say or what they think about you. Stop waiting for validation. Many of you have not moved 1 inch in life simply because you are waiting for somebody to tell you you are doing well. I've told you time before, and I'll tell you again, that even if nobody is clapping for you, you clap for yourself. My parents taught me that the agama lizard, that when it falls from the wall and lands on the ground, it looks left and right. And when it sees that nobody's clapping for it because of its great feet, it nods its head. And that nodding of head is it clapping for itself, telling itself, I am a survivor. I fell from this wall and I didn't die. Be like the agama lizard. Clap for yourself. Celebrate your little victories. Don't say this is too small to celebrate. If you don't shout your own, nobody will shout it for you. Your self-worth does not belong in the hands of anybody. It is nobody's responsibility to make you feel good about what God has asked you to do. Don't wait for validation. Don't wait for somebody to tell you are doing well. You know that you are doing well. Nehemiah came to a point in his life. Sanballat and Tobiah were busy calling on him to come for a meeting. And he said, how shall I leave this great work and go to them? He called the work he was doing great work. Recognize that what God has put in you is no small thing. Recognize that God has created you wonderfully, fearfully, gloriously, powerfully. And when you walk on the street, walk with a spring on your feet. Bounce like you know that your daddy is the owner of the world. Don't walk like you are a pauper. Don't walk like your life has finished. Don't behave as if you are at the bottomless pit. Walk like somebody who knows who his daddy is.